Hello everyone, my name is Leticia. I'm a PhD student in Brazil, in Pontifical University Católica of Minas Gerais. And I did one exchange in University of Queensland in Australia. I'm doing a research about climate change, and I'm looking for the small island in developed states. So I will talk about my research, and you can see one paper that I wrote about this object and this kind of issue. And for now, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to talk about this really important subject. So first of all, we can see one picture here about one island. The small island developed states, they are very small, as the name said. And the problem is because this little island, this little land, they can disappear in the future because of the climate change. So the sea level rising, it's a problem for this kind of people who live in this island, because in the future maybe they cannot exist anymore. And if some people that lives in this island, they move to another place, so they are a kind of displaced people. Some researchers, they call environment refugee, but because they are not refugee about war, this kind of things, they are moving to another place because they cannot live in their place anymore. So it's very dangerous, very scary about. It's one topic that we can see the climate change. What's the effects about climate change for people, for the world. So all of those islands that are very worried about this kind of topic about climate change, they go to some seminars, they go to some international conference, they try to show how dangerous is this topic of climate change for them. And in all of this conference, for example, there's a lot of conference from United Nations about climate change. This group of islands, they try to put together what they are thinking about this topic. They try to be more activists. And some of people that live in this kind of island, they are very worried about their culture, because we can see here, for example, we have one little girl that live in this kind of island. So they have the culture, they have their own objects, and they are very worried about how can they live in another place if they cannot talk, for example, their language. They need to talk their other language. So we have some cases, for example, people who live in this kind of island, they moved to Australia. When I was in Australia, I talked with a lot of people that live in this kind of island. So they are living in Australia right now because they are worried about climate change, they are worried about the future of the new generation. And at the same time, they miss a lot their culture, their language, music, and people who they are like, they have religion, they have all of these things, and when they move to another place, it's very different, and they are moving because climate change, so it's very dangerous. And one of those islands, it's Tuvalu, because Tuvalu is one of the most famous case. We have some PhD theses, some research about Tuvalu. They are looking for all of those islands in the world. Tuvalu is one of the most dangerous effects about climate change. So it's very interesting when we see the map. Here, for example, the world, we have a lot of islands. Then we have the small island developing states in the Pacific. So we have Tuvalu, Nauru, we have Marshall Island, Cook Island, Fiji Island. And Fiji Island in this year will coordinate the conference about climate change in United Nations. So it's very important for those islands because it'll be the first time that one of the islands are coordinating one conference like this. And Fiji is very small as all of those islands, but they could not be the host of the conference because we don't have any kind of place to be the host of this conference. So the conference will be in Germany, but in the same way, Fiji will be the coordinator. So it's very interesting for those islands. And we can see as well there's some islands in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Central America. So we have Bahamas, we have St. Lucia, and a lot of islands in this place. In Africa, we have some places they call island, but sometimes they are not island, like Guinea. And we have another place in the Indian Ocean. So Maldives is one of this kind of island. And those islands, they are very beautiful, so there's a lot of tourism in those places. A lot of people who are in honeymoon, they go to this kind of place. So the economic about those islands, it's sometimes they are agriculture. The agriculture. It's very important when there's some rain. So if there's climate change, there is some very different kind of things to worry about the agriculture. And in some cases, we see a problem for the food for those people because the climate change. We can see if there's no water, some problems about the health. And international relations, they call these kind of issues as a security problem because, for example, when we see a war or when we see some very dangerous problem, we call security because we need to be secure, we need to be safe, we need to focus in this kind of problem. And when it's a security problem, people worry about this. People put some money, and those kind of islands, as they are in developing, so they are not big countries like developed countries. They don't have money, they don't have financial for to adapt to climate change. So sometimes they need this kind of financial from another part of the world. And some place they have, for example, some countries like Germany and some rich countries in the world, for example, they can put together some money for those islands. So they are trying to put this in United Nations to have some money to adapt to climate change. And there's a lot of cooperation, a lot of international cooperation about climate change as well. And it's very interesting because we can see the world together trying to solve this problem, because this is one problem of the world. It's not just one place, not just one people. The climate changes affect all the world, all of those islands. We have, for example, Singapore. Singapore is one of this kind of island. But Singapore is one developing states that they have more money. So sometimes some island they can adapt to climate change easy. In some cases it's very hard to adapt to climate change. So they need the cooperation about the other states. They need to put together some agreements to. Some countries they have a lot of problem, for example, they are fact of the problem. But some countries they cannot see the problem, the climate change. They are just doing things that contribute for the pollution, but in the same way they not affect about this consequence of climate change. So it's very difficult when they are trying to negotiate, they are trying to put together this kind of issues, because each country they have their interests, they have their responsibilities, and in some cases it's hard to put a responsibility and to put some goals, for example, to reduce of the greenhouse is very difficult for some countries. And for those islands, they depend, for example, to China, to United States, and some countries to put together in some agreements. So we saw in Paris, the COP21, we saw this. They are trying to focus how can put together some countries that they are really trying to solve the problem, the climate change problem, because they are effect of climate change. And the other way, there are some countries that are not affected, but they contribute for the problem. So it's very difficult to negotiate, to have this cooperation. But we can see, like, the word, it's just one word. So we have the same source, and like water, food. We need of this nature to live. And for these people, this kind of dangers, climate change affects the life, affects everything. So some people put this issue like a problem. It's a justice problem. It's an environment justice problem. And climate change is one of the justice they are trying to put together. They are trying to be alive. And so it's not fair sometimes when you see some countries, they are really dependent about the climate, and if there's climate change, they can have a lot of problems in